Hey guys, this is Mr. Breen, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the ablative case uses in Latin, or at least some of them. Okay, the first and most obvious use of the ablative is with the preposition, and there are only two cases in Latin that take prepositions, the ablative and the accusative cases. This is the one you've probably seen most, so the translation is going to depend on what preposition it takes. So, Cicero ambulat in horto cum Caesara. Cicero walks in the garden with Caesar. Okay. The translation of the ablative here is totally dependent on what preposition you have. Same thing in this other sentence down here. Quintus cenam parat in casa. Quintus prepares dinner in the house. So again, this is an ablative. We know it's an ablative because it follows in, which takes the ablative. Can take the ablative, can also take the accusative. And you can remember many of the prepositions that take ablatives with the ablative astronaut. Sid, space, you guys can see this. Sub in desine pro aab cum anx. Remember that aab kind of works like an in English, where you do a bat, an ostrich, and the same thing goes for ax. I know that a lot of these prepositions you haven't seen before. Sub means under, in means in, de means about or from, sine means without, pro means for, on behalf of, something like that. Aab means either by or from. Cum means with, and ax means out of. There's also an ablative of time when. So this is just the time when something happens. So Galli Italiam invadent illo die. The Gauls will invade Italy on that day. Or you could say something like Prima Luca senatores ad templum veniunt. The senators came to the temple, or come to the temple, at first light. We would say in English, dawn. So with this, you're probably going to translate it at or on, something like that. And how do you know you have an ablative of time when? Well, first of all, there's no preposition. And the word die here, well, prima luca is just at first light, but usually it'll be something like die or hora or something that, or anno, something that is actually a length of time, some word that means a length of time. There's also an ablative of place from which. So we might have something like patres conscripti. This is another word for senators. Roma abeunt. The senators are going away from Rome. Or we might have Aeneas Carthagine discessit, which he did. Aeneas left Carthage, or went away from Carthage. Here you're going to use from to translate this. How do you know you have an ablative of place from which? Well, these tend to go with cities, towns, or small islands. So Roma and Carthagena, these would qualify as cities. And sometimes it's also places like house. Domo often means from home. If it's not a city or a town or a small island, you're usually going to get something like ax or aab. One very common use of the ablative is the ablative of means/instrument. So this is usually some kind of physical object with which someone is performing some action. So in this first sentence, we have milites gladiis contra hostes pugnamant. So the soldiers were fighting against the enemies with swords. Here we have an ablative of means/instrument. Ad Athenas navibus magnis consules iban. The consuls were going to Athens in or with big ships. How do you know it's an ablative of a means instrument? Well, it's not a place from which, it's not a time when, because these words don't have a time meaning and don't have a place meaning. So, it's probably what they're using to do something else. There's also an ablative of manner, and these tend not to be objects. These tend to be some kind of abstract idea. So, magister discipulos gaudio docet. The teacher teaches the students with joy. or discipuli labores eorum dolora perfaciunt, which hopefully is not the case, but the students finish their works, their labors, with sadness. Hopefully not. But usually we're going to translate these with, just like we did with ablative of means instrument, but these tend to be, again, sort of emotions or things like that. Finally, we have the ablative of agent. This might need a little bit more explanation. In an active voice sentence, we have a subject, a verb, and a do. The subject goes in the nominative case, and the do goes in the accusative case, and this is what we call the agent. It's the one doing the action. And the do is what we call patient. In a passive voice sentence, it works sort of the other way around. We have a subject, a verb, and then we have sort of something that is doing the action. But this is the patient. This is the one that is receiving the action. And over here is the agent. So the question is, how do we express the agent? If Quintus is, if Quintus is captured by somebody, then how do we do the by somebody part of this? Because this is going to go in the nominative, but we're not going to put this in the accusative. Well, if this agent is inanimate, we're going to just leave it alone and have it in the ablative. The Gauls have been repulsed by the attack. Or the boys have been hidden by the shadows. With animate agents, we actually stick ab in front of it. So the city of Rome is captured by enemies. Or weary boni, the good men were being praised by the senators. So with inanimate agents, we just have a bare ablative. With animate agents, we have ablative with ab in front of it. Hopefully, as we're going through these ablative uses, you're noticing that the way that we know which ablative use of any specific ablative word in a text is oftentimes depends on what that word means. So if you see something like anno, year, it's probably the ablative of time when. Or if you see something like Athenis, probably, since this is a place, probably an ablative of place from which. Or if you see something like gladio, which means sword, this is probably ablative of means instrument. So you really need to know what these words mean so that you can tell what kind of ablative each one you see is.